welcome. So glad that you're here. So glad that you're taking time out of your day to hang out with us. To get the most out of today's webinar, out of today's training, turn your phone off, put it on airplane mode. When you're in counseling sessions, when you're working, hopefully you put your phone on airplane mode so that you can fully dive in, fully be here. Multitasking, it's not true, so your brain is somewhere else. So please make sure that just you're here. You set this time aside. So be here. Next, really focus in. If you find that, maybe you've lost focus or something, stand up, move around, just stay engaged as much as you can. We want this to be an engaging conversation. Take some notes. For me, taking notes is a great way to keep my brain really connected and like figuring out what's going on and making to-do lists of what I'm learning. And then take action afterwards. I'd highly recommend that this week, if you want to level up, it's one thing to learn, it's one thing to consume. But if you don't get out there, if you don't exercise, if you don't build these muscles, all you've done is you've just consumed and you haven't, actually taken some action. So let me first tell you who I am. I'm Joe Sanok, and I had a group practice from 2006 till 2019. I sold that in 2019, and now I consult with people who are starting, growing, and scaling a private practice, and sometimes exiting a private practice. I have 2 kids who are just awesome. I'm a single dad and love paddleboarding. Also, we have the #1 podcast for counselors in private practice. It's called Practice of the Practice. A lot of you I know are listeners of that. We get 60 to 100,000 listens a month, and have 4 shows a week right now. So there's bound to be something that you like in there. I doubt that you'll listen to every single show, but maybe you will. But we just passed 800 episodes recording. That's going to be released later this year. But it's crazy, 800 episodes. And I am so excited to have Dana Coretta Stein here. Let me just start with Dana was at our very first Slowdown School. She was a consulting client years ago. And, when she was just getting her group practice going and starting, a lot of her work outside of her practice. She's an EMDR therapist, approved consultant, and author of the EMDR treatment planning templates and the EMDR therapy progress journal. Dana is passionate about the importance of trauma-informed care and the effect it has on emotional, physical, and mental well-being. But even more than kind of all that's right here, Dana is someone that shows up authentically online, has a huge social media following, is really impacting the world of therapy and EMDR. And honestly, I'm just so freaking impressed and wish that I could be Dana when it comes to Instagram Reels. So I do. Dana, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, so I'm going to just kind of talk about some of the things that we're going to be covering. But really, we want you to also say, well, how would I apply this to my individual situation? This is highly conversational. For the first probably 20, 25 minutes or so, Dana and I are going to be talking through Instagram Reels, like how to think about content, how to make things look good, all those kind of basics and more advanced things. And then I'm going to share a few next steps for you. And after that, we're going to have about 15 minutes of Q&A. What always happens is when the Q&A starts, it's crickets, and then it gets going. And then at the end, we have like 5 or 10 questions all come in at the end, and we can't get to them all. So think about your questions now, put them in the chat, raise your hand so that we know that you're ready to go back and forth when it's time for Q&A, because we want you to get the most out of this. But we're going to be learning some of the most up-to-date information on using Instagram Reels. Instagram's been focusing on Reels to compete with TikTok, and a lot of that's even changed since we wrote this like a week ago. And so Dana's going to be sharing with us where we're at right now in regards to what Instagram likes. It's a moving target. It's not like, this is the way it is. A year ago, stories were the big thing. Reels seem to be bouncing up a little bit, but we'll be talking about that. And then we're going to talk about, how do the bonuses work? Is that still going on? Have they canceled it? All sorts of things around that. But more than that, it's how do you connect with your ideal clients? How do you connect with your audience? How do you think about your audience and dive into all that? So I'm going to stop the share right now, and it's just going to be me and Dana. I would highly suggest that you put it on speaker mode so that you can just see us when we're talking. Or if you want to just see everyone else's videos too, like you can do that too. So Dana, I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Anytime I hang out with you, it's always exciting in my book.
Yeah, well, and we get to hang out at Killing It Camp also in Cancun in like just over a month. We'll be doing more trainings like poolside. It's just going to be awesome. So
cool. And social media is like, sounds magical.
I know. Well, and our Dana from Practice of the Practice was so excited about coming to Mexico, but she has a wedding. So I'm glad you're going to that wedding.
Hear that person get married like during Killing It Camp.
I know. I'm pretty bummed.
Yeah, yeah.
So rude.
Cancun would not have been bad. Well,
If I
Dana,
wasn't the matron of honor, I would skip it.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of a bold move. I like that and respect it.
Don't tell her I said that.
I have the recording. So Instagram, Dana. So tell us how you first got into Instagram. When did you start thinking about that beyond your private practice? I think for a lot of people, maybe they think about it in regards to like, okay, my practice will be on there. Just, you're in New York trying to get New York people in, but you made the jump to talk about EMDR and go like way big. So talk through that decision.
So it's like everything else that's been kind of big lately. It's a product of COVID. So during 2020, I really wanted to focus on becoming an EMDRIA approved consultant. And as I don't know if anyone's familiar with EMDR, with that, you also have to first be a consultant in training and get consultation hours to get practice. So in my brain, I'm like, how are people going to find me and know that I'm offering consultant and training services? So I started the EMDR coach page, and that was in May of 2020, and just started putting out things like information, quotes, and then, like everything else, it's like bumpy at first. You learn what doesn't work, you learn what does work. And then with consistency, it really just took off, but it was just a product of really trying to build my consulting leg of my practice, and it kind of blasted off from there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, one thing we talk in Audience Building Academy is like building your audience first before you try to sell any products. And so like you totally embodied that. So I know that we have people that are here. I would love for in the chat, if you're primarily here because of private practice Instagram, will you put private practice in the chat? And if you're here primarily because you want to build an audience, maybe that goes beyond your private practice, put beyond private practice. So private practice or beyond private practice, just so we have a little bit of an idea as to your main goal. Oh yeah, it looks like we're about half and half. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So we will make sure that we talk to both.
Yeah. And you can do both.
Now, would you recommend for people that want to do both? Because a lot of people I think are wanting to do both, having two separate Instagram accounts for that?
It depends on what your long-term goal is. So if your goal, like I always had an exit strategy in mind. So I don't want to be the face of my private practice because I want to be able to back out of it and let my team run it. So that's why I intentionally chose to separate. But if you are the face of your private practice and you're okay with that, then yeah, keep everything connected. And it will work just fine. Because then basically whoever, if you have a group practice, people connect with you on Instagram and you just give your staff your overflow.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about private practice first. So when you think about someone doing an Instagram for their private practice, what are the things that you think are tried and true that you think will, even 6 months from now, like ways that you think about content, ways that you create content, things that aren't going to change when Instagram changes? Like what would you say are some recommendations for people in private practice?
Yeah. So just creating evergreen content. So creating, and this really goes for private practice and also for if you're doing beyond that, is just creating information that withstands the test of time. So if this is like how you operate, and sure, it might change, like maybe your niche changes over the years, but putting out information that consistently demonstrates that you know what you're talking about and you are the go-to person for that specific issue that you help people with.
Yeah, such a great point. I mean, since 2013, we've accidentally ranked #1 for how to name a private practice. And that still is one of our top pages. And so it's like people are always trying to figure out how do you name a private practice. So that's that kind of evergreen content. What's some evergreen content you've created for your private practice or that you've created for your consulting?
So for my consulting, I've definitely created things that's just like the basics of EMDR therapy, which yes, maybe as research changes over the years, that might change a little bit, but foundational stuff, how to get certified in EMDR, because a lot of people don't know the difference between basic trained, certified, and approved consultant. So creating graphics that are like roadmaps and things like that, all those things that are consistently, I noticed like in comments, the same questions that are always asked. That's like the evergreen content in my mind, because it's stuff that people just continue to ask and continue to be curious about.
Yeah. Well, even yesterday when we were doing the Q&A, there was a question about the difference between gross and net income. And it's like, for me to have that beginner's mind, it's so helpful to do these kind of Q&As because it's like, oh yeah, that's something like we never learned. And at some point I learned. So
Right.
to go back to those kind of things.